because I'm still not grounded from.
Oh, did you send me the bio?
You are live. We are live, Jamila.
Okay. You're gonna have to just help me out here, Anissa. I'm so sorry. I think we're all having such a crazy day today. I've also been
Okay.
running from this morning, and it's just been hectic. I haven't had a chance to catch my
I
breath
think it
even.
is. I think it is one of us.
You know, this
Yes.
year started off in that way for me. Well, at least I'm not sure about you two. Um,
No, no, I can attest to the same. So I'm just going to greet the ones that have very eagerly started here even before we went live. Hello, Ronald from USA. Hello, Dr. Maria on the Instagram side. Welcome, Jamila, and our special guest, Shaheda from Zambia, originally from the UK. And I think today's conversation that we will be addressing is imposter syndrome and trusting ourselves. Now, before I go ahead and talk more about imposter syndrome, I'm going to read a little bit about Shaheda so that the audience that are here are going to have some background. But let's just greet our audience properly. And for those that are on the replay, please forgive us today. It has been a frazzled day from this morning, our 8:30, whilst it's only 8:30 in the States right now. It's already 3:30 p.m. in South Africa. So it's been busy. For those that are watching the replay, please don't hesitate to comment. Welcome to Shifting from Grudge to Grit, Grace, and Gratitude. We didn't even introduce what this show was all about. But there you go. Now you have it. And don't hesitate to contribute and engage and share your own testimony. So let's get to read a little bit about Shaheda. She helps men and women who are held back by anxiety to heal and navigate towards their true north with positivity and compassion. It is her first wish to observe clients claim their growth and confidence personally and professionally. Having more than 25 years' experience in the corporate world and overcoming anxiety and depression with her own researched methods, she understands the demands of the corporate world and how anxiety holds individuals back from their potential. She is passionate about paying it forward by highlighting to her clients the wisdom they already have within, encouraging self trust to uncover their truth, gain transparency and direction, realizing their own resilience. So, just a little bit about the imposter syndrome. For those that don't know, it's anchored in many forms in self doubt, in self sabotage. You're attributing success to external factors, fear of not living up to expectations, overachieving, downplaying skills and expertise. And research suggests it's developed by culture, our parental upbringing, and societal norms. But the irony of all of this is, whilst it happens to many people, it's generally to those that are successful, hyperachievers, perfectionists, natural genius, actually, and soloists and experts. So without further ado, Shaheda, this is over to you. And we're just going to greet another special guest from Texas, Peter Bida. Thank you for joining us here today. Shaheda, so over to
Hi,
you.
hi, ladies. First of all, can I just say thank you so much for having me on. It's a pleasure being here. I'm very, very grateful, and welcome to all the people that are engaging with us on the various platforms. And please do go ahead and ask us whatever you would like to ask us. We want to give back as much as possible to those who are who might have questions and things like that. But it was, well, I couldn't help but smile when you were reading back the bio because, and especially the description that you gave to today's session, because my word, how many things resonate? How many times have you heard me complain, Anissa, about my imposter syndrome? And yet, the hyperachiever, now that we're learning about saboteurs within us, and it's funny that I can even laugh about it now. Yet when we know how much the saboteurs just linger and linger now, don't we?
Yes, yes. So, I mean, Shada, what I'd really love for you to tap into is just to share some of your story. And for those that don't know, I met Shida online on a coaching course about almost in this year, it will be 4 years, mid 2024. We've never met in person, but she's a sacred sister, and we almost chat every single day. So when we talk about her complaining about feeling like an imposter, I'm just going to say it openly. It's both of us that will acknowledge and admit when we're feeling a bit like we're in imposter syndrome. But I really want you to delve in and, as vulnerable as you've always been, to bring to the forefront where the story of anxiety and depression emanated from for you, Shida.
Okay, so I think that's where the real story of transformation of a form really does start, especially as I've just started to write about this whole episode. So I wanted to write a short article, but it started in 2014, and it hit in a short period of time. It hit, but when I think back to it, it was very much in the making, running up to that point when the anxiety and the depression very, very suddenly hit. And although I was given a little bit of a push by a lady that I visited in South Africa, a therapist, to try and find out what was going on at that time. I didn't know what was going on. Yeah, I was broken and I couldn't function, couldn't sleep well. I'd lost that connection to myself. If I would go and cook a meal, I would half the time burn the food because I just was out of it. I was just not really present. When after I visited the therapist in South Africa, she really gave me the push, the inclination, and the kind of like a taste of what it would be like to rediscover myself. And that was the I think that was the goal initially, to rediscover myself. Where was this anxiety coming from? And I think a part of that decision to start that discovery, that self-discovery, comes from the decision that this is no way to live. This is absolutely nothing that I can stay with. It's not something that you can live with every day. So the decision was very strong to do something about it and to turn things around. And it always helps me to remember whenever I think about this, and I can resonate it with whenever we fall sick or if you have to go to the doctor and we have to take a course of antibiotics. At the end of the day, self-care comes down to us. It starts with us, the decision, the push, the start from within. And along the journey of finding what methods worked for me, so I did a lot of journaling, and the journaling was a kind of self-discovery, analytical kind of journaling, pondering back on many things that had happened over my life up to this point, and why did these things irritate me or cause negativity within me. So a lot of pondering and self-discovery. Journaling is something that I still do today. If there's something that I am not managing to figure out within myself. But there were a lot of other things that I had to battle at the same time. So the anxiety brought up a lot of lack of sleep. I looked into what vitamins were the best vitamins to take to handle the anxiety or to keep it within control. Diet, exercise. One of the biggest things I found is for anxiety is sleep. Adequate sleep was really, really necessary. I found that the less sleep I had, I couldn't find the root of where my anxiety came from. Anxiety came up kind of every day in everyday life after that, depending on what was going on. For example, I would have anxiety over a sense of knowing that something was missing in my workplace, something that I needed to do to take care of. And yet it was very much in the subconscious, and then once it came into the conscious, I knew exactly what it was. Um, so I would get onto it. So anxiety became a bit of a like an alarm bell for something that might be missing. But what I discovered is that the more sleep I had, the easier it was to deal with the anxiety as well. And it's a bit of a vicious cycle as well. Anxiety
Yeah.
causes like a sleep, and you need sleep to fix the anxiety or to soothe the anxiety. So
Jamila, do you have any question for Shaheda before we kick off onto sort of more of the um, questions that we have prepared?
No, no, I just want to acknowledge, how debilitating anxiety can be. And most of the time when we experience it, we really don't understand what it is. We don't have the knowledge, or we're not educated about it. And I can understand how that can bring in such um, terrible, paralyzing insecurities within a person. And we've all seen this at varying degrees, I guess, and experienced it. Um, and I think until you experience it for yourself, or you see it happening to someone who's close to you, you don't truly quite understand the severity of it.
yeah, that's very, very
So,
true. And the funny thing is that I was beginning to then, after that, I was beginning to experience anxiety over things that I would never really experience anxiety over, like traveling or but the very small things and the big things. Yeah, looking back, it was a method by which an alarm bell would go off, and yet anxiety would come up over fears as well. It was a lot about fears too.
yeah, I actually wanted to tap into a little bit of that because you spoke about there was many things that were contributing factors. And while sleep was one of them, sleep is just, I almost want to refer to it as the band aid to put onto that feeling of feeling anxious and almost like sleep it away. But let's delve into what were some of the root causes that were the trigger points. Because I think
Yeah,
that's really where we want to get to understand what is in the system within your world that
yeah,
is almost taking control of you, your thoughts, your feelings, and your emotions that would trigger this levels of anxiety. What was the source, in other words?
so for me personally, it was, I think, a combination of things. It was some things in my life that I needed to accept. There were, for example, where I stay, you know that where I stay and is a very small town in the eastern province of Zambia. And I felt very limited whilst I was staying here until I came across coaching. And then I was very much relieved because I realized, okay, the internet is there. The whole world is just on a laptop as long as I've got good internet connection. So that was one of the factors. I felt like I wasn't doing enough with my life. I wasn't fulfilling a purpose. I wasn't. The imposter syndrome is maybe coming from the fears that come from the anxiety, but a part of me, the self trust element, always knew that there was much more that I could do. There was like a certain knowingness, and that I trusted and held on to in a way that acknowledged within me that there was something much, much bigger that I could do, and that I wasn't limited to the small town that I'm staying in. And I think what I would really love for the people listening to learn from this experience is it possible that if you are experiencing anxiety, what is it within your life? Is there a deeper, quite a large domain of your area that needs to be addressed? Maybe you're feeling like you're not fulfilling your full potential. Maybe you're feeling like you need to be more financially secure and being held back in some way. Maybe there's some element in your life that you are possibly being told or pushed to accept, but you're not ready to accept it, and you don't have to accept it. And then there is a change that can be done about it. And it's funny how society, family upbringing, parental upbringing, those kind of things do affect us. They definitely do affect us. And sooner or later, I think many people are going to realize, okay, we are not exactly what society dictates to us. We are not exactly what family dictates to us. We are individual, unique beings of our own, and it's a gift to discover yourself, I think, to be really aligned and know yourself so that you're comfortable and really acknowledge how you've been designed, I think. So I hope that
Jamila?
kind of covers
So,
what you are.
Shahida, would your anxiety then, from what I'm kind of understanding, came from you not um, acting on the potential that you felt that you had within yourself?
Yeah, I
But
think that was part of it, yeah.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah, and I think that it also works in the opposite direction as well, where some people have this anxiety because they feel they're not good enough to achieve what maybe others can achieve. So it's that self-doubt, and that causes that anxiety, and then also attaches the label of imposter when they are moving towards actually achieving what they inherently have within themselves.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that definitely is the imposter syndrome. And how does one get over that? And I think that is where one of the best things that I've learned is to conquer fear is taking action. I think that is one of the best things that I have learned. And what I've learned in the earlier stages of when the imposter syndrome was so big is you want to take an action, and yet the closer you get to it,
Have we lost her?
Oh, seems like we've lost Shida.
So whilst we're waiting for her, I'll acknowledge some of the comments.
Hmm.
So Ronald was saying exercise and sleep so important, and journaling. Who am I really? What have I taken on to survive in this workplace and environment in a turmoil that has become normal? Andre, your comment is slightly too large to put on the screen, so I'll just read it. I agree 100% that sleep is most important factor that causes anxiety. I'm going through that process at the moment where I'm getting on average 5 to 4 hours of broken sleep and even good REM sleep, I think it is. This is due to the heightened stress at the moment. Yet my meditation and physical training is what's keeping me going. But most importantly, the breath work is what helps me with my daily challenges. Ronald says again, lack of sleep, living as a zombie. And so many persons in the head making commitments, PTSD, anxiety, depression, faith to deal with this. Yes, we are gifts and not to be conformed to others and forsaking your worth and value. Greetings, Ashif. Good to have you here today again. So whilst we're waiting for Shada to come back, it's just so interesting for me. So Jamila, just to continue on what she was saying,
Mm,
it's almost like there was an element of playing small. And
correct.
so I'm living in the smaller part of the world and a small town. So let me remain small because I cannot come to my full self or live up to my fullest potential because that's not how it's designed. The societal norm here, and also knowing a little bit about China, is that from an Indian community perspective, it's women need to stay in their lane,
Correct.
remain in their place. And there's this, what's the word, patriarchal reality that we have to deal with. And I don't think that that's just limited to the Indian culture, because I'm now certainly not pointing any finger at any particular culture, but there's patriarchy that exists within everywhere. So imposter syndrome is so diversely spread that I feel that it comes in many shapes and forms, and that the trigger points is for me what we should be discussing here. What are all those trigger points? Because it's the environment that contributes for us to feel triggered. And then the internal states of where we are within ourselves, that also if there isn't an inner peace and there's projections and there's attachments, that's where the suffering comes. And depression and anxiety is a subset of that. The dis-ease that we get to is in the actual illnesses, the dis-ease that comes up along the way. So I'm almost curious to delve a bit more deeper. So I don't know if you want to respond while I try and reach Shaheda.
Yeah, I think it's like you say, you almost are expected to play small. And coming from a small town, small community, I can relate to that. And it's almost as if you think to yourself, well, what would people say if I'm shining as I should be shining? What would they say? What would their opinions of me be? Who does she think she is? So to be safe and not to ruffle any feathers, then you feel as if, let me just blend in with everyone else and let me not try and stick out. So
Yeah.
I think that there's a lot of bravery that also needs to come from within someone, to allow yourself to be who you are, irrespective of what society might feel, irrespective of what you may think your peers or your family might say about you. It's your responsibility to yourself.
Yeah. But let's get back to some of the things that I highlighted right at the start for those that might not have joined us. So if it's anchored in so many different forms, right? Self-doubt is one of them. Self-sabotage is another. But then the attributing success to the external factors, that's the need to be validated, to feel heard and understood and accepted. And then there's that fear of not living up to expectations and the overachieving and the downplaying of skills and expertise. So that downplaying of skills is the playing small aspect that we just spoke about. But again, if you have gotten to know yourself more intimately and you let go of the desire to be heard and understood and acknowledged outside of yourself, I think that would more than, I believe wholeheartedly. In fact, let me bring it back to myself. I was able to release myself of imposter when I realized that I need to be in my truth. And this was not about seeking external validation. Shaheda,
Sorry,
thank
love.
you for coming back. We lost you. And how was the anxiety trying to get back on?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I had to throw that in there.
No, you had to. Definitely. It's funny, like some years ago, it would have been like, oh my God. But now it's like,
Yes.
okay, let's just
I was just going to say that, Shaida. Yes, yeah. I think if you had to rewind, maybe like a few years ago, this would have been like the absolute worst thing ever, because you place everybody else's expectations above your own. But if you can just remain clear-headed and realize that life happens and it's okay for it to happen. It's okay for you to be who you are. People will accept you, and even if they don't accept you, it's still okay. So I'm glad
it's so okay.
that you mentioned this, that it's okay at this point. It's like when we were beginning the podcast, Anita, and going back and forth. What
Oh my
happened?
God.
I think you get to a space
The funny
also
thing is,
where
Anissa knows is like some years ago,
Yes,
I wouldn't
Shaheda?
even have been able to come onto social media on live like this. You know that,
Yes.
Anissa, some years ago, I would never have been able to come online on social media like this. I would have just been so conscious. But now it's like, okay, let's just do another live, no problem.
I've got to love it. I mean, Shaheda and I were doing a bit of a reflection of the time that we've gotten to know each other. And I hated the camera myself. That gave me anxiety, like having to step up and make a video. It just gave me this visceral feeling. But Shaheda, when you were gone, what we were talking about is this idea. Is she frozen on the screen now? Drinking water.
She's back again.
Are you back?
Maybe not.
Are you? Let's see if you're back. Wait. Let's see.
Yeah.
You're back. So the reflection that we were doing is like the idea of coming out into the public. That was a debilitating and a visceral feeling that one didn't want to do. But because it was egoic, there was a need to please and be seen and almost get a credibility and an acknowledgement out there in the world. The moment we change the paradigm from me, I, to rather being in service to and of, it's a very different energy, right? So now when we show up here, we show up in our authentic truth. It doesn't matter if the bloopers are online live. We're not going to edit it out. It doesn't matter. So talk to us. Okay, I just want to say Dr. Maria said, I totally agree. Impostor syndrome is linked to attachment. It took me years to confidently use the title doctor in front of my name because I thought it should have been justified by some time of ACA. I'm not sure, Dr. Maria, what that means, but we get the essence of the message. Shaheda, talk to us about you being in a male-dominated world in your previous job when I met you and where you are now.
Yes. Okay, so for the past year, I've been working with a hospital in a position of advisory consultant kind of position, kind of here, there, and everywhere, covering all areas. And before that, I was the accountant at a local community school for 8 years. The funny thing is, looking back, I'd initially from the get-go, even though it had been 8 years, I had told myself, this is just a stepping stone. I don't think I've ever shared this with you before, Anissa, but from the time that I started there, I told myself, this is just a stepping stone. This is going to lead on to other things. But there was a very much a male-dominated area, and the challenges that I had is where I can talk about, again, what society defines us to be as women, or what culture defines us to be in a certain way. So I had challenges in, I think I'd outgrown the school, and I think maybe that is what prompted me to eventually move on from the school. The challenges I had were, how can I say, in my mind, I might be thinking that they are perceiving me in a certain way, but I may be right or I may be wrong. And that's funny. Maybe, Anissa, you can there's a term for that, possibly you would probably know better of. Whereas we're thinking we are being perceived in the wrong way, but we are just trying to give the best possibly can. That perception, it's just a perception, but it might not be true. And especially if you're in a society where women going out to work is still very unheard of. It's very, very new. It's not common. In fact, where I'm staying, I'm the only woman that I know of that is, which is changing very, very slowly. But for many years, I was the only woman that I knew that was going out to work in our community. So there was a lot of, it was very much a male-dominated area, and it was something that I felt like I had to, it felt like an added challenge on top of the imposter syndrome, on top of the want to deliver well on my responsibilities as an accountant. And yeah, it was a challenging time. I think looking back, I just kind of outgrew the school, and that's what prompted me to eventually leave when one contract ended. And it was just kind of amazing how in the very week that I decided to leave the school, the job at the hospital came up. And I think there's an element of when you can recognize that you've outgrown one place and we are casting off an older version of ourselves and stepping into a newer version of ourselves, as the minute we accept it and we bravely walk into that newer version, it's amazing what other opportunities and challenges can come up, what other opportunities can come up straight soon as you let go of the older version, the attachments that go with it, and you recognize it and you acknowledge and accept that, okay, it's time for newer things, and really, really acknowledge it on a very deep level. Immediately, new things can pop up. And Anissa knows this very, very well. She's heard me gripe time and time again about all my challenges.
So you spoke a lot now about attachment, and we were saying that during the break. There's this egoic attachment, and because we have desires and cravings and wants, that's the route to suffering, and imposter can rear its ugly head in those moments. But today is also about how do we trust ourselves. That's the theme that you wanted us to talk about today. And the trusting ourselves is shifting the perception that we have, which is linked to the narrative, the stories, the beliefs, the conditioning, and the programming, to perspective. Because perception is our reality and how we view the world. But it's not necessarily the people that we work with, or our family, or our partner's reality. Jamila, do you want to come in there?
I must just commend you, Shaheda, on just listening to your comment about you being the only woman in the community who actually went out to work. That's not anything to be scoffed at. That takes a lot of bravery, and it takes a lot of growth, I think, as an individual, to be able to take that step and put yourself first, and to be able to make sure that this is what I want to do, and this is where I'm going to be growing. And like you said, when you allow yourself to be open to that, opportunities come your way. And I can relate to you because Anissa, as you know, when I was married, I was not allowed to work. I was not allowed to study. And a woman's place was at home, and most times, not to be seen and not to be heard either. So it's just striking a chord within me, and I feel like I just have to commend you on that, because there's a lot of fear also in making yourself small, or in having to make yourself small, because you're fearful of what people are going to say, of stepping out of the box, and being different. So well done to you for being so brave. And maybe you may not think that it's something big or something commendable, but really it's such an inspiration. And especially with me coming from that background.
Thank you.
Shaheda, are you with us?
Yeah. I'm sorry, I couldn't. The connection's a little bit unstable my side. But first of all, I have to thank you for your acknowledgements. It's really, really appreciated. I think it comes back to being truthful with ourselves in who we are, and I think that's where the self-discovery really paid off. For us to be absolutely honest with who we are and look at what our heart is wanting and why is it wanting certain things. And there are certain things, I feel, looking back, that we are who we are. We've been designed and fashioned in a certain way, I believe, by our Creator, and he knows us better than we know ourselves as well. And I think the truth comes in from accepting and listening to our hearts and acknowledging what our heart is saying. So it was something that had to be done. Otherwise, I wouldn't be myself. I wouldn't be myself, and I wouldn't be living up to when I knew what I could do. Otherwise, it would be, in a way, suppressing myself, and that wouldn't have done me any good. So I think what I can say from that is it's okay to be different. None two of us are the same anyway. Be unique, be yourself, be true to yourself. Take off those masks and say what you need to say. Even if it's an uncomfortable conversation, we can always have these uncomfortable conversations in a nice way. Say what you need to say in a genuine, nice way, without malice, but with love and empathy instead. I think it was just a matter of, and I think that's where the anxiety has dissolved in a very large aspect, being true to myself and listening to that voice inside, and accepting that, yeah, okay, maybe being the accountant at school just wasn't enough, and there was something much, much more from deep down that was, wanting and yearning more. And it's funny how I've not really had any training on how to be like a business consultant or anything, but in some manner at the hospital, I kind of in some way, all the experiences of my life, because I've had various different jobs in my life up to now, and they're all paying off now at the hospital. The hospital is benefiting from all of these different experiences that I've had in the past. And I think that's just all part of the plan that's come together. And I think that's something else that we need to kind of trust as well, like the plan. And that there's the right time, the right thing will come up in the right way.
And I think what's important also is to recognize.
I can resonate with it.
I see you reading Ronald's comment there, Shaheda.
I think, Anisa, also, I just wanted to stress on the fact that I think there's a time delay between us.
There's a time delay. Yeah. Shaheda, were you saying something before we go over to Jamila?
I missed what Jamila was just saying, and I really want if Jamila could repeat, and then I just missed what she was saying because of the time delay as well.
Yeah, I think, Shaheda, it's very important for us to recognize our achievements and recognize our strengths. I think that a huge aspect of imposter syndrome is that we minimize it. Whatever our achievements are, we say to ourselves, oh, that's nothing to be proud of. Anybody could do that. And it's so important for us to take the time out to recognize our accomplishments, our strengths. And I feel like, if you're a hard worker, acknowledge that about yourself. Acknowledge if you are dedicated and you, inspired to do something and you go all out to get it. I think also it's important for us to challenge our negative thoughts, because when we have this imposter syndrome, our minds are just filled with negative thoughts about ourselves. We're always putting ourselves down. So I think for me, those two are very, very important aspects in allowing yourself to give yourself the confidence and allowing yourself to be who you truly are.
Shaheda, so I'd like to come in there because
I really what you.
Oh, the delays. Shaheda, I know that you are.
I can hear you.
I know that you are highly educated as well, and so how did you take that into being into the small environment, as in small town in Zambia? And also being a woman, as Jamila has said, have gone out on your own. How did you leverage, or did you actually put aside your education to almost dumb down, as Jamila was saying? You're not going to show all of the above of what you've been, what you professionally studied for. So I'm trying to understand what dynamic of imposter syndrome made you not use the qualifications that you had and just played small rather.
So so please just repeat that last part of your question again. What part of imposter syndrome did not?
Which part of imposter syndrome made you not use your qualification? So was it that you would rather
Okay.
dumb down the fact that you have a qualification and you just do the work that you actually were employed to do? Or did you show up by trying to drive change and transformation with what you were qualified in? Or did you not use it back in the day?
I think there were times when both of those kind of scenarios happened. There were times when I first moved to Zambia, I recognized that I wasn't. I recognized my difference at that time, my uniqueness at that time, and there were various jobs that I had been offered, finance and admin in an American tobacco corporation. I ran a business center for some time as well. So in those moments, I completely went with my uniqueness and then completely honored the knowledge that I had and the experience that I had. But then somewhere along, for about a year or so before 2014, when the anxiety and the depression came in, it kind of, in a way, it was like a reset button where the imposter syndrome that was never there before and that had come up with the anxiety all came up, and it was that's when the imposter syndrome really did manifest. And it was kind of, it made me find myself again, find my strengths again. And yes, along the way, what I loved about what Jamila had said earlier is to acknowledge myself in whatever experience or knowledge or wisdom that I did have, that I was able to share with the places that I was working in. And there are times when, yes, when I knew what was better, and then the imposter syndrome sometimes, out of a fear of the perception, kept me quiet. And there were, and I think that knowingness that we need to speak up about the truth, and it's knowingness about sharing a better way of doing things with a purpose, because I really felt like the school was like a service to the community. There's like an internal conflict that goes on, and I think there's only certain ways in which, or for certain amounts of time, you can continue to suppress that knowingness about what is the better way, or how to honor the purpose of something like a school, and eventually it's going to bubble up. And eventually, so I can say that there were times I was on both sides of that, on both sides of the imposter syndrome. Yeah. I hope that's kind of answered the question there.
Definitely, definitely. Jamila, anything you want to add?
Yeah, it's just amazing to, that when you are experiencing this imposter syndrome within yourself, from the outside, people don't look at you the way that you're seeing yourself. You may exude the most confident, able. Anissa, I think we've lost Shaheda again.
Have we? Oh no.
I'm here. I can hear you.
Okay.
I can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, we might exude something totally opposite to the way that we feel. And it's such a shame and a pity that while we're going through this, that we miss out or we lose the experience of acknowledging our true potential and our true strengths. And I think a huge part of it is just to stop the negative talk to yourself. And once you start doing that, you definitely then on your journey to believing in yourself and coming home to who you actually are. And that's what's most important at the end of the day, isn't it? It's about that inward acknowledgement or knowing of who you truly are.
Yes, I think what was coming up for me there when you were describing that is not to absorb what the maybe perceptions of other people about us may be. It doesn't matter. as long as we are within our truth. I think that is something that is coming up of when I'm, as Jamila was describing that, the perceptions are going to be there whether we like it or not, but we don't have to absorb them. And they may be there or they may not be there. And that's okay as long as we are truth to ourselves.
Have we lost Shaheda again? Or is she there?
Yeah.
So I want
Can you
to
hear
bring
me?
something. I'd like to bring something in because there's this whole suffering in silence. Because Jamila, you just struck a chord with what you said. It is our interpretation, and how others perceive us is not that. So we end up suffering in silence because there's a lot of shame attached to this feeling that we're feeling, right? So I I want to bring that suffering in silence and how you were able to no longer be silent, and how has that supported your healing journey when you let go of silence?
Gosh, I think everybody has, I'm sure everybody at least once in their life has um, had to have what we call like a difficult or a challenging conversation. The topic may be sensitive. We are wary about how the other party may receive it, how we might come across, how we might be sounding. But I think the courage, if it is not taken on board, or what my personal experience was, is these feelings of a need to have some certain difficult conversations were so strong that they couldn't be ignored. And if they were being ignored, it was causing anxiety within myself. So what I'm realizing is that I think anxiety can have like very, very many different forms. And one of the things that we know is that anxiety can come up when we're not in our truth, when our values are not, when our values are being how can I say, overruled, if we are not within our own values. And in a way, you could maybe call it boundaries. There are certain times when boundaries are crossed, and we may not realize that the boundary is being crossed until those negative feelings of anxiety come up. And that's when, if we can delve into why these feelings coming up and recognize why certain circumstances are causing anxiety, and where within our values our values are being overruled, that is also an indication of anxiety coming up. um, it's funny now, I don't really get anxiety. Sometimes I just get like a, how can I say, like negativity, but not necessarily anxiety. I'm
Yeah.
I feel really blessed that I actually experienced anxiety for a while. But I think, yeah, there's various forms in way these, our body tells us when something's not sitting right with us. Our body tells us in I think for each and every and for each individual, it must become it must be coming up in a different way. It's I think necessary to read our bodies as well. Where are these emotions coming from? What is it that
Yeah.
is being transgressed here? Why am I reacting this way? um, I have to, for some number of days, I haven't been feeling very well, and yet my imposter syndrome was telling me I'm not pushing myself hard enough, I'm not doing enough, I'm not. There's something that I'm just not doing enough of, and yet I had to really today acknowledge, okay, something is off in terms of my health, and I really just need to pay attention to it. And yet it was coming up in a very negative way. So it's funny how many different ways that this can come up in. But I think one of the things, the best things that we can do is read our bodies and read the feelings that come up.
Yeah. Would you
Yeah.
say then, Shida, that
And that is,
anxiety is amplified because we have so little self-compassion for ourselves?
yes, that is one of the biggest thing I feel that we as human beings, we should love ourselves a lot more. We deserve to love ourselves a lot more. We deserve self-empathy and self-respect. And I think there's a certain flavor to that self-empathy and self-respect that you're not going to get from other people, but it's a certain flavor that when you get it, when you give it to yourself, when you feed it to yourself. And yes, these past week or so, I've been really hard on myself. And it's just today I put the pause button on and said, no, 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 I need to sort out whatever health issue it is that is coming up here. That comes first. And I had to really recognize and acknowledge for myself that, yeah, self empathy, self love, self care, no one's going to do it for you. You have to do it for yourself. You have to show it for yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to get to sort of, I know that from the research that I've done a while back, there's a spectrum of anxiety coping. And it's sort of like you have the growth zone, which is right in the middle, and that's in the green zone. And then you have the danger zones on either side, right? So some of these are things like avoidance orientated. No, 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 never face the scary thing, hide, distract. That's sort of some of the danger zones, or ignoring those internal cues to push it. So you're going to push it and you're going to break through at any cost. So hence we sometimes have burnout, because even in that state of burnout is imposter syndrome that's hiding itself behind all of that. The growth zone is to face the things sometimes and bring a friend and take breaks and set growth orientated goals. So what I'm hearing you describe is that being able to recognize anxiety within yourself and those trigger points, the overthinking, the avoidance, even things like sweating, stomach issues. You've mentioned some health stuff now, panic attacks, there's procrastination, there's needing reassurance, there's lack of patience, that worrying, right? That incessant worrying that happens. Your breathing is rapid and you find
Yeah.
trouble breathing, right?
Mhm.
And these are all ways that we can recognize anxiety in ourselves and others. Headaches, believe it or not, headaches is also another form of it, as well as that rapid heartbeat, and insomnia is playing up there, and memory issues. Interestingly enough, memory issues. You want to talk to that, Shaheda?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's lovely how you brought up the different variety of physical sensations that can come up in the form of negativity that we are feeding ourselves, beating ourselves up, coming from a source of these thinking habits that we are talking about today. For example, imposter syndrome. I'm not good enough. I'm not pushing myself enough. I'm not being hard enough on myself. It doesn't have to be that way, but coming in from a perspective of self-love, the sage mind, recognizing by looking at what we've done in the past, what Jamila was saying earlier, acknowledging ourselves truly. The negative feelings, I think they come up in different forms and in different guises for everybody. Maybe these are related to our thinking habits that we've developed over the years. But yes, I think it's really important that we pay attention to them and stop, instead of suffering with those negative feelings and pushing ourselves, but stop and think and ponder why, where is this coming from? What's really happening here? What's really under the surface here? Am I having a thinking habit here? Do I need to be kinder to myself? Is there something that I need to learn about myself here? Is there something within my values that is not aligned here, not right here? I think, and that is where the self-awareness comes in, I think, for the individuals. Would you say that, Anissa?
Yeah, because some of the triggers that triggers anxiety is what you've just mentioned. So there's a few of it. Skipping meals is also a thing that triggers anxiety. You've already spoken about sleep disturbances, deadlines, be it work, school, or others, excess work or responsibilities. These are all trigger points. That level of uncertainty, crowds can trigger anxiety as well. And then loneliness. Loneliness
Yes.
is a big one for me. that feelings of isolation.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think it brings to me a reminder of a client that I have, where she was suffering because on some level she hadn't come to terms and accepted the loss of two children, two very, very small children. And because she hadn't, acceptance is coming from up to me, because I think there are scenarios in which we can change things or we can't change things. If we can't change it, then it's a matter of acceptance. If we can change it, then what can we change? There might be boundaries to what we can change, we can't change as well. But it's funny how there are different things within all of us, different needs, and that is where the anxiety or negative feelings can come from. Yeah, definitely.
So there's some comments. There's some comments I just want to acknowledge, and maybe it's another discussion point for you to consider to respond to either Jamila and Shaheda. I like when Ronald says epigenetics, inherited trauma and anxiety. And then Andre says tolerance and compassion are qualities of fearless people. Paulo Coelho, one of my favorite authors. And then again, self-compassion, love and cherish and protect ourselves. And another interesting comment from Ronald is introverts coping in extrovert work thoughts. Right? Becoming a car. I can't pronounce that.
Caricature.
Yes. So there's two things I want you to respond to really, is that the epigenetics, inherited trauma and anxiety question or comment, as well as maybe sort of the introvert extrovert.
Yeah, I think in terms of the inherited trauma, it's possible that our parents, for example, who bring us up, have got traumas that they never acknowledged and healed on. And it's possible that children, as they are being brought up, indirectly absorb that negative energy because parents might not be in they've got wounds that they haven't healed from, and then it comes off and it's accepted, or it plays a part in the children who are being brought up and they're bringing up. So do you think that maybe that is where Ronald is coming from? But I think that is one of the things that was coming up for me.
So yes and no, because I know that Greg Braden, who's a scientist, and Dr. Bruce Lipton, they've done scientific studies that whilst epigenetics historically would have played a role in driving, sort of genetically you have the disposition to become whatever that wounds and trauma, the inherited trauma and wounds and anxiety is almost passed on. It's no longer the truth, because it is, the gene can only sort of survive or thrive based on the environment that it's in. So it doesn't mean that you have the propensity to become depressed because my mom was depressed, or an alcoholic father, so I have the propensity to be an alcoholic. The science has now proven it's where the gene is either going to, we can change the environment where the epigenetics are placed in. So we're not destined to whatever our pathologies or intergenerational traumas. We're not meant to be almost, for lack of a better word, say, I'm going to read Dr. Maria's comment now. She's the doctor, so we'll go back to her comment shortly. But my understanding of it is we're not going to necessarily become that of what our biological parents or family structures refer to as. She says, I think there is wisdom. Just one comment I want to read here in relation to that. She says, I think there is wisdom in recognizing our triggers, but I feel the biggest form of compassion is accepting that it is where we are at the moment we don't always have to fight to prove something. And Andre says the broken will
Yeah.
always be able to love harder than most. Once you have been in the dark, you learn to appreciate everything that shines. And again, neuroplasticity is exactly valid. The brain is malleable, so we do have the ability to change the makeup of the brain. We're not destined to become that. So over to you, Shaheda
Yeah,
and Jamila.
I really love two things there. The neuroplasticity, that is definitely something that I 100% agree with. There are certain, I mean, you know this, Anisa, there are certain big shifts in my thinking patterns that I've made, I think, in the past 6 months or so, in the past year or so. And the other thing is, it was only when I was in my 40s, after I experienced anxiety myself, that's when I realized that my mom also had anxiety. And at that time, I never even really knew what anxiety was, and I wish I had. But she did suffer anxiety, but at that time I didn't know what it was, and it was only much later, many, many years after she passed away, that I recognized, oh my goodness, this is what my mom had been suffering. And but thank goodness, I've been able to turn it around. That's all that I can say, and I feel very, very blessed to have been able to turn it around. But if I can do it, so can anybody else. And it's just a matter of doing the work, I could say, and to continue moving towards that end of the tunnel, so that you're in the sunlight and you can hear the birds sing.
Jamila, any
that's where the grit
closing,
comes in.
Yeah, I
closing
think
comments?
I think that more conversation should be had about these seemingly taboo issues, because you mentioned that you realized much later that this is what your mom might have been experiencing, and you probably wouldn't have known it because nobody spoke about it. It was a taboo at that time. If you suffered with anxiety or depression or anything, it was always seen in a negative way. So for me, I feel that to be able to embrace this well enough, we need to start talking about it more without attaching any negative connotations to it. We need to seek support. And only by the awareness of it can we change it. So, and just one last parting comment is to trust in yourself.
Beautiful.
Yes, that is the
Shaheda, any last comments?
double
Because we've actually
making
come to the end. We've come to the end. Any last comments or wisdom you want to leave with the audience, Shaheda? Oh, beautiful.
Trust. Oh my word! Such a flip ball. So gorgeous.
He's been dying to come.
I think trusting ourselves, listening to that voice inside, which is coming from the heart, coming from the truth, in all aspects of our life, having more love and empathy, not just for ourselves, but for the people around us, for the people that we interact with, the person at the bus stop, the person at the train station, the person at the supermarket. Even though you might not be having a great day, if you give a person another smile, it does have an immediate effect on ourselves as well. But I think the big thing is trusting ourselves, that voice inside, that is the biggest, to be in our truth.
So I'm going to conclude on that wisdom that Shaheda has given us today, because we 1 hour and 3 minutes and almost going on to 4. Shaheda and Jamila, please stay on. Thank you to our very active participation and the wisdom shared from our amazing guests that have joined on the live. And we look forward to seeing you next week on episode 11. I think we're moving into episode 11 again.
Unbelievable, Anisa.
Yes. Thank you, everyone. Until next week.
Well done, guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.